Zoom shows me loading, but I might actually be live in 5, 4, 3. Ooh, there he is. Let's get this on the road. Hi, Jeffrey.
What's up?
I'm not quite sure yet. Aha, okay. I wasn't sure on Easter what was going on, so happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
So many things going on with Easter that I'm just so happy about. Hey, Jeffrey, what do you get
Mm-hmm.
when you cross an elephant and a rhino?
Hell if I know.
Hell if I know. I love that. It's one of those things now. Every time I say hell if I know, I'm always gonna think of that animal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I get it.
That's awesome. So I was just checking out our Twitter at Public Access Pod before I was getting on the air just to see what was going on. There was some world animal news about this awesome fox stealing, stealing something. I don't know. I just read the caption, but there was every hour we post um, a hotline for people that are being bullied,
Mm-hmm.
and you shouldn't have to ask somebody to find out who to ask is the slogan that we put on it, and every hour we do that, and we got some traction from somebody else who's trying to explain bullying and that how every species manages to bully, and all of us are prone to bullying at some extent. And that made me think of the fragility of communications and our egos to kind of take offense to something that maybe wasn't meant to be offensive, and so it could come off as bullying if somebody shared a gif with me yesterday, and I was like, I don't know if you know how frustrating it is to try and read something that's just flashing on my screen as an
Mm-hmm.
answer. And then I was like, oh, that sounds like I'm mad. So I had to put, I'm not mad. I just tried reading it for the first time. I just tried reading a GIF, which wasn't necessarily true. It was the style the GIF used, but I had to
Mm-hmm.
explain where I was coming from just so that somebody didn't think I was outraged.
Right. And that's always the tough part is, you think about just the way that communication has changed even in the last 20 years, our ability to communicate over instant messenger or text even.
Right.
And you lose a lot of that verbal context as to where that's coming from because, you know, I could hear you just sitting there going, "Oh, do you have any idea how frustrating it is to try and read this?" And it
Right.
sounds a lot different than when you read it just cold because it sounds like you're actually like really upset.
Right.
So, even just within the context of reading text versus hearing somebody's voice,
Mm.
we miss a lot of social cues that would tell us, "Oh, this person is frustrated, but you know, they're not like angry and
Mad. Right.
exactly." So,
Yeah, and I think we try to counter that by reading way too much into the messages that we're getting,
mhm,
and that's my problem. I tend to be blunt because I just want to say it because I'm doing 40 other things because I think I have ADHD, you know what I mean? And
right,
so to me, it's just putting a pin there so that, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. If you want to stop it, just stop it.
hmm,
But nothing. I try to tell people all the time, I'm never mad. If I'm asking questions in quick succession, it's because I don't understand and I really want to understand, because I
hmm,
don't think people are ever intentionally assholes to me for the sake of being an asshole. I think they have something behind it that they're trying to share. And I have to dig into that with some people. And some people just tell me, hey, your fly's down. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And that's
right.
how it is. We go on with life. And I have trouble communicating with people because they always think I'm frustrated with the verbiage I use in texts because I don't dumb down my language. And I found out that putting a period at the end of your text means you're mad.
I would have never thought about that.
Right?
It's we kind of, it's kind of like when you look at the history of where text came from, it was just this idea that you couldn't talk to somebody in person,
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't send them like a voice clip or anything like that. You just needed to communicate something short, sweet, to the point. Well, that can be kind of difficult,
Yeah.
and like, especially if you're someone like me who's kind of a sarcastic dick most of the time.
Right. I have sarcasm coming out of my veins.
Right. And so, I end up with people being like, yo, did I say something to piss you off? I'm like, no, I thought I was being funny, but apparently I wasn't.
Right. Or I'm trying to find a sweet way to say something abrasive.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because I tend to
Ah,
say things to people that comes off as abrasive. Like, I'm not saying you're completely invalidated as a person because you need to adjust and move an angle to the right or left to be correct. I'm just saying you're so close to your point that maybe if you rethought it from another perspective, you'd be dead on.
or of what I used to say, oh man, it's probably about 10, 15 years ago, is if you can't say something nice, say it like a total dick, because
Yeah.
then everybody will think you're joking.
Right, exactly. And with my mom, we used to debate everything. Everything. I mean, she was Jewish, so she debated everything. And as soon as that she started losing the argument, she would flip it and take my side and make me defend the other side until I was starting to be right, and then she'd flip it again. And those were the conversations I had growing up with all of my family. They all did that to everybody.
Mm.
Everybody did that to everybody. So discussion to me is supposed to be a little heated to get anywhere. It makes no sense if we constantly agree on everything. We
But
have,
you also have to be able to argue the other side's point if you want to effectively counter it.
yeah,
And I've shown that time and again with some people that I know. One time, somebody asked me to defend fracking,
hmm,
and the way that we currently pursue oil. I said okay, and so I went after it, and they were legitimately angry at me,
yeah,
and they're like, "How could you believe such a thing?" I'm like, "The answer is I don't.
right.
I know how to get into that headspace to argue like I do."
Well, because if something is happening, it's because somebody thought it
Hmm.
was the right thing. And if you take their argument, a lot of times it makes sense because it became
Hmm.
active action. You know what I mean?
Hmm. And so, a lot of the times when I approach arguing a point, it's not just because it's a point that I believe in, it's because I've in my head sat down and thought about it from a person who has such a perspective. So
Yeah.
that way I can try and counter the arguments that they're going to have, which is why, you know, like I said, with progressives most of the time, I like the end goal. And I get why they think the way that they do and why they think that more government involvement is going to solve the issue. And I
Mm-mm.
can see why they would think that because, realistically put, there is no greater bargaining power than the federal government of the United States. The problem is that when you think like that and you know that that is, you tend to just write everything off as, so this is a good thing, until you start dissecting everything that says, this is actually a bad idea.
Yeah, I figured it out, Jeffrey. I
Hmm.
figured it out. We don't have a problem with government. We have a problem with bureaucracy.
Yes.
And I think even Republicans would say they're okay with the size of the government. It's the bureaucracy within the government. And so I think progressives matched with Republicans would reach a libertarian goal. if you
Quite
took the two,
possibly.
if you took AOC and Tom Cotton, put them into one person, you might have something that wants to be progressive, but wants to get rid of the bureaucracy that it takes to get it done. And I heard this saying and it made me think of you. There's no atheists in foxholes and there's no libertarians in a pandemic. And I immediately thought of you and I was like, no, no, no. This is the libertarians' time to shine because
Hmm.
because it's like building a website without the infrastructure behind
Hmm.
the website. You can put all the websites you want out there, but they're just going to crash one by one by one unless you have the coding and everything, a system in place for that website to maintain and manage.
Hmm. And that's the funny thing is, the whole there's no libertarians in a pandemic. It's, I've had to argue that I've had to argue both ways during this pandemic. Well, a lot of ways, I should say.
Yeah.
Why, for example, I understand why, the liberals want to shut things down, because, it's the same reason that the liberals want to shut things down is the same reason why the Republicans only want to teach abstinence in school. You can't spread something if you don't do anything. I get it. I mean, that's
Right.
100%. If you don't want to spread something, don't fucking do it. Absolutely. I agree with that. But for the rest of us who live in reality, you
Right.
know, the answer looks like Japan or Korea. They required people to wear masks, and they have consequences if you don't.
Right.
Now, I can make the argument as to why I think that's not necessarily the best model, but the data tells me that it works. It works better than what we did. We'll go
It,
with that.
it's the Swiss cheese theory, and I love this
Mhm.
theory. If you take 4 slices of Swiss cheese and put them together, there's no holes. So masks, they might be one effective measure. Social distancing is a second slice of cheese. Sanitization
Limiting
is a
sanitization and limiting
right,
your time around other people. Exactly.
right. So it's
And
the
now
Swiss
and
cheese
now we've
theory.
added the fifth slice, which should really shore this thing up, and that is vaccinations.
And I love it. You got your first shot, right?
Yep.
And Saturday I get my second shot, and
Oh,
I'm
you're already up to your second shot, huh?
that's Saturday. And then 14 days after that, I'm free to see and spend time with who I want. Um, what I think is really interesting is the cancel culture that's about to come from that. Because
Hmm.
what I'm feeling, the side effect that I've been feeling for about a week is this sense of superiority to anybody that hasn't gotten the shot. Because now it's like, yeah, I can go to a baseball game after April 24th because I've been vaccinated. But guess what? You can't if you haven't been vaccinated. I can go fly on a plane. I can just buy a ticket and go. You can't if you haven't been vaccinated. And so these people that didn't want the vaccine that their politicians got, but then told them not to get it,
Right.
they're
The
going to
irony
be
of that.
they're going to be that's going to be shrinking because between the infection rate just bouncing from them and them dying and them not being able to do anything and eventually just getting the vaccine so that they can go to Disneyland is going to be a huge difference. You know what I mean?
So for me, like, I have a fundamental issue with the whole vaccine passport idea
Oh,
in
I don't
in
like the
in the
passport.
United States. Like, because there I think New York has been proposing that they essentially, like, you can't travel from outside the state into the
Hmm.
state without showing proof of vaccination. I have a fundamental problem with the whole vaccine passport, but I will say that traveling to other countries is there's already a standard there. Like, to go to Africa, you have to be vaccinated for certain diseases there.
Yeah.
Because why? Because you don't want to catch sleeping sickness from the tsetse fly. You really
Hmm.
don't.
Right.
Um, or in places in India, like, you will be required to get a certain set of vaccines because they have um, leprosy and polio issues.
Right. That's why
So
I say we didn't defeat polio. It still exists. It's just not big enough to affect us.
it's just not here because vaccinations. And
Because vaccinations.
and I mean, that's the reality of it is that polio didn't go away. It got vaccinated into being not an issue
Right. Here.
here. And now, in India, where they've been vaccinating for polio, when I was getting my master's degree, and I had a lot of Indian cohorts, you started to see this weird rise in the whole anti-vaxxer movement, in 2015 to 2017 when I
Right.
was in master's school. And they looked at me and they were like, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Why do your people have such a problem with vaccinations? We've been dealing with polio and we're finally vaccinating for it, and it's like turned this massive corner for us.
Mm.
And I said, I have no answers for you, because most of us were raised with, you get your goddamn shots, and that's the end of it.
Yeah. And the others were raised with a suspicion of a government not telling us everything, but just what we needed to know. And
So the anti-vaxxer breakdown is a lot closer, a lot more evenly split than you would like to think it is.
I believe
So,
it.
so the last time that I looked this up would have been about 2016, and at that time, the split between anti-vaxxers was 60% conservative, 40% liberal. And I
I
was like,
hmm,
wow, that is a lot closer split than I thought it would have been.
I thought you were going to go with people that have privilege and money can risk it. And so
Oh,
they
that's
they believe it, but people that are too poor say I don't believe in vaccines because they just can't afford it. You know what I mean?
there's some of that, but
Mhm.
there's been a lot of that rise of, the I know what I'm talking about because I did a Google search and I saw that
Right.
mercury was listed in a vaccine, and
Mm.
that vaccines cause autism, and it's like,
Yeah.
I one of the things that I told people about getting my master's degree is that uh, the thing about getting a master's degree isn't that, I know everything. I just know how to research better than most people.
Or critically think.
Not even just critically think, because you have to know what you're looking for. And you have to be able to understand what you're reading as part of that. So, for example, like for me, one of the things that I'm constantly having to look up is different ways in which I can pull in and manipulate data so that way it comes out in a way that's clean and easy to graph.
Right. That
People
makes
think
sense.
oh, manipulating data, you're changing the numbers. No, that's not how it goes. It's you have to think about it as all of these numbers come in as a conglomerated clusterfuck, and you kind of have to clean it up so that way it's like, okay, here's how this should look. So
Right.
that way a machine can easily take this information and work with it.
Yeah, with the
Or
relevant information as opposed to ancillary information.
right. And so, it's not that you're deleting anything. It's just that, one data set might have a couple of pieces that you need. So you got to pull that in. And another data set has pieces that you need. You got to pull that in. And
Mm.
then you got this data set over here that you need to grab. But then you need to clean out all the other columns that you're not using.
Hmm.
So you clean out those columns, and then you have to figure out how do you reference all of these data sets together, so that way
Yeah.
you not necessarily create, but you pull in all the relevant pieces that you're trying to study, because a lot of the times the information that you're getting, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't need.
Yeah.
That's not important to what you're trying to do.
Yep.
And so when you put all of that together, I mean, we call it manipulation because, when you look at the definition of manipulation, it's literally just the usage and, formation of something based on your needs.
Sure.
Not with the, like we talk about with context, not manipulation as in somebody who does something to someone in order to get them to agree with. That's not it, because
True.
sometimes you do all of that work and you're like, yeah, this is going to prove my point, and then you hit enter and wow, that doesn't look anything like I thought it would. Okay, so I was
Mhm.
wrong. And
But
that's just the way that it goes.
that's what a news story is, though. A news story is just a collection and formulation of relevant information that proves your theory, right? But anybody should be able to do the research. I mean, okay, so the first thing you type in is there mercury in vaccines? Oh, sometimes a long time ago they did use that. Um, is there second search? Is there where else? What else is mercury in? Second search, apples. Okay, what's the
Right.
percentage in a vaccine as opposed to an apple? But people don't want to continue that research because the first thing proved them right.
Well, and but then you also have to understand that from a biochemical standpoint, as our guest had pointed out, the way mercury bonds with other things renders it inert.
Yeah,
So if you don't understand that and you don't know that, you see mercury and you go, oh my god, this stuff is deadly, it's going to cause all sorts of health issues. And I
yeah.
mean, if you were just working with straight mercury, yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
But like many other things, it all depends on how you chemically bind it, because
That's
it
right.
changes its properties.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's like you think about it, there are so many things out there that could actually kill you. I mean, chlorine could actually kill you.
Right.
Chlorine will kill you. It is caustic, it is painful, but guess what? You eat a fucking ton of it in salt because it bonds with sodium
Yeah,
and it changes its properties.
that's right. All of our dyes and our fake food flavorings come from petroleum. You know what I mean?
So the idea that you see something and you get horrified because you're like, oh my god, this is terrible. But then you have to understand that chlorine, like I said, chlorine has multiple uses. Chlorine
Hmm.
gets used as a disinfectant, and you use it in pools. you know
Yep.
it helps keep your water from getting bacterial growth. You consume that. I mean, there are times when you could probably taste the chlorine more than others, and ugh. But also too, like chlorine bonds with sodium, and that's how you get straight up table salt.
Mm. I will.
And you can,
Yeah.
and some of you consume a fuck ton of that. I mean, after my stint at Bozeman's uh, dining halls back in the mid to late 2000s, uh, yeah, I'm pretty set on my salt intake
Yeah. That
because that
was the
was salty ass food.
that was the first thing that I actually, like, as a 20-year-old, decided I didn't need to do. I decided I was going to eat the food as it was. I wasn't going to salt and pepper it at the table because it should be made the way I like it.
I like adding pepper to stuff. Like, for
Well,
example, I had eggs and toast this morning, threw some pepper on my eggs.
you have to, but I mean, as they're cooking,
Love.
right?
No, I throw it on after.
Oh wow, you like the straight taste. I like it a
Yep.
little. I like it a little cooked down a little.
Yep. It's a taste I mean, I like it cooked into the food as well, but I
Hmm.
also like it on top. So it's one of those things, like, it just depends on how you're going to work with it. And voila, even with simple cooking, you can relate that back to how vaccines work. Is
Hmm.
that, mercury is not the stabilizer that you add at the end of the process and it's just sitting there
Right.
floating. It's part of your cooking, it's part of your process of making the vaccine, and that by bonding it properly, you don't have to worry about
Hmm.
it. The amount of things that you actually deal with that have mercury in it is quite incredible. When you think about any number of things, if you're really concerned about, you know mercury in your food or in your vaccines, you should do some research on the number of households that still have lead, something we know that causes problems.
Hmm.
They're like, I want to say it's like 10% of houses in America have lead pipe that still feed the house.
Yeah. No, I
That's
totally agree.
insane. And that, there is no bonding on that. You're just getting straight lead in your water.
So first of all, the guest you referred to, Dan, our buddy, uh, our infectious disease expert, is going to be visiting us next week, which is
Fantastic.
exciting because of the COVID, just the vaccines. We all wanted to brag about it a little bit. And I was thinking when you were saying that we're all scared of gluten these days, but gluten is just the thing that forms the thing that binds the bread,
Hmm.
right? So gluten isn't as scary as you would think, you know?
But
And
and then that's the thing, is that for people who have genuine, allergies and markers for it,
mhm,
I've got people in this house that have gluten issues. I've got family that has gluten issues. I have friends that are celiac and there's
right.
really bad issues. Gluten isn't this whole huge terrifying thing. Like that, like I remember watching that rise and I was like, oh, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Everybody thinking that, for the people that have the allergy or have heightened allergy markers towards it,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a problem. And I did a full food allergy panel test,
Oh, did you?
and this was in 2010, and nothing. I wasn't allergic to anything in 2010. Now, I should probably do another one at some point because I'm pretty sure that lactose has probably made it onto that list.
Gotcha.
But but I really don't have any food allergies. Unlike
Okay.
other people in the house where they do have food allergies, and hey, great. That just means that, we know what to avoid for them.
Right. But avoiding gluten as somebody that isn't intolerant of it is nothing. It does
Right.
nothing to you or for you, but it helps the people you're around. And so if
Yep.
you can find something that's good and tasty, I made biscuits with gluten-free flour because I ran out of regular flour. So I
Hmm.
used half coconut flour and half gluten-free flour. And I gave them to my friend, and Thanksgiving, he ate four of those things. And he was like, "These are the best biscuits I've ever had." And I was like, "It's just the way I cooked them. They're gluten free." And he got a smile like, "You mean I'm doing something for my diet?" No, no, you're not.
No, no, you're not.
But he felt
No.
good about it. And I didn't care. You know, my sister has celiac, and so does my brother in law and their daughter. So I learned to learn about those things. And I would
Hmm.
call her and be like, "What about rice?" And she'd be like, stop it. You know?
Like, just no, just no.
Right. So
And
I got all those lessons, and you can eat potatoes if you're worried about gluten, but you can't if you're worried about sugar.
right, and that's and that's just it. Is that that's where that whole understanding your own body and what makes you feel better than others is important. Even in this household, like me and my oldest, we like to have a lot of meat in our diet. That's where we feel the most satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And Devi and our youngest, they're more veggie people.
Mm,
The more veggies they have, the more satisfied that they are. And that's understanding, what works best for your body is really important, but also to
sure.
being healthy about it. I mean, you have to know when your body's going to be, when your body's like, maybe I should add a little bit of meat into my diet a little bit more, or hey,
Yes.
my stomach's really bothering me because I'm not taking enough plants in and I'm shitting literal bricks.
Right. It's a fiber thing. Yeah. If I eat straight
So
barbecue for 3 days, yeah, I'm in trouble. You know what I mean?
right.
I'm not gonna lie, but that vegetables are satisfying. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take that. So what
And that's
I try and have a balanced meal with low carb, but then my joy is getting a dessert because then the dessert
mm,
gives me the carbs that finish it off. Just
hmm
like drinking a lot of water with my meal, I eat less because I'm drinking so much water, and all of that is in an incorporation of a healthy
right.
diet.
Right. And the funny thing is like as I've gotten older, there have been nights where I'm like, you know what? A salad sounds really nice tonight.
Yeah, right.
Fuck yeah, salad.
Yeah,
Whereas if you would have asked me like 10 years ago, I would have been like, salad? The fuck are
right.
you on?
I try to eat salads 3 times a week actually because of the fiber and the content and the just the diversity in what I'm eating. Because a salad is amazing when you go shopping with the salad mentality and you look at and you're like, ooh, what cheese would I want to put on that? Ooh, I can
Hmm
put eggs on this. Ooh, chicken breast. And so the options are limitless with salads. It's just we have this stereotype of what a salad should be, but I grew up at Sizzler and it was like the all you can eat salad bar, and my mom would
hmm
take me there because the kid salad bar was free if she bought a meal. So I got to eat the salad bar, and yeah, bacon bits and Thousand Island dressing. It didn't really matter.
Right. But also too, I will say that, a person's love for vegetables or
Mm.
meat just entirely depends on how they grew up. Like based on how I grew up, the only time that we really had vegetables was when we had our large garden grow. And as a kid, I would apparently sit out in the garden and I would just eat all the vegetables. I would eat all
Oh
the peas, I'd eat
yeah,
all the strawberries. I would eat everything that was out there.
that's
But
awesome.
then, when we moved, after my parents separated and I was living in an apartment with my mom,
Mm.
and all we could afford were canned peas, that shit was disgusting. And
Yeah.
I couldn't eat it. Like it was just absolutely horrible. So, what ends up happening is my love of vegetables completely takes a left turn. And that's when you realize the cost of fresh fruits and vegetables is a barrier that is so high and
Yeah.
such a bummer because most people enjoy the raw fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got their taste profile, their texture profile that they like, and I've been learning about that a lot lately.
Mm.
But overwhelmingly, the greater access you have to fruits and vegetables that are fresh, you start to figure out it's like, hey, my kids actually like certain things because they're fresh, they're delicious,
Mm-hmm.
and it tastes far different than the canned stuff does.
And I think it comes from cooking because I never liked like raw vegetables, but when I'm cooking and chopping up celery, I eat it to see what the flavor is. And like bell peppers, I would have never eaten a raw bell pepper, but I'm sitting there like, and I have a bowl full of just the vegetables I cut so I can sit there and snack on it. And I think more people need to realize that,
Hmm
and I think your taste buds start out brand new and things just are so strong to you, so vivid. But I think as you get older, your taste buds get used to certain things. And so when you eat a Brussels sprout in your 40s that's made right, as opposed to a crappy one you ate when you were a kid, you're like, all right, I can see this for the elegance that it has.
But this is where body chemistry comes in though, because every 5 to 7 years your cells change out, and
Everyone,
so
yeah.
you pick up new tastes, you pick up new dislikes. So like right now we found out that our youngest last night suddenly detests barbecue sauce. The smell of it makes her nauseous, and I was like, ah,
Yeah.
shit, I remember that.
Yeah, me too.
About her age, so as a kid, black olives went on every pizza that I had. I loved black olives. They were
Mm,
amazing. They were delicious. I loved it. About her age, all of a sudden the taste of black olives is just like, nope,
yep.
cannot do it. And I've lost the taste for it ever since.
Right.
Um, uh, baking a ham, for example. I know there's probably a bunch of people out there this Easter that are out there baking hams. The smell of it literally makes me nauseous, but it used to be one of my favorite foods. Like
Wow.
I have a lot of memories of going up to Wolf Point, Montana. My grandma would have just made a big ham and just getting huge chunks of that and eating it with Easter dinner. And I loved it. I loved
Hmm.
ham. But about my youngest age, nope. Like the smell of it just instantly made me nauseous and I'd throw up. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it anymore. And that was also the time that I suddenly became lactose intolerant. So
Interesting.
so even still, like your body, I would say that, sometimes, you can say, yeah, your tastes mature, but I think it happens to be more a function of body chemistry than it does just your tastes maturing.
It's funny.
Because, for example, I never liked Brussels sprouts until Devi made Brussels sprouts for me one
Right.
time, and I was like, "Oh my God, these are actually delicious! What the hell?"
Right. I had a friend make them for me, and I was like, "Is this what they're supposed to taste like? Come back next week, you know?"
Right?
But yeah, I have a friend, and I told her I was like, "You're my favorite bag of chemicals in the universe," because
Hmm.
I think we're all just a bag of chemicals, and if you want to change your molecular composition, drink more water. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm having to get back into is that I hit a spot where it's just like it was really busy, really run down. So it's like
Mhm.
it's always easy to grab a soda to get that caffeine and sugar kick. I've
Right.
had to switch out of drinking regular soda because I get sugar crashes really hard.
Mm,
Like if I have a Pepsi, about 2 hours later, I'm just like falling asleep at my desk, and that's bad.
that's
So,
right.
but if I have diet sodas, that doesn't happen. Really, I
Mm.
shouldn't just be having soda at all. So,
I gotta
you
say
know,
that, like, I had a Coke Zero, and it did not raise my blood sugar level at all. And I found this pasta. It was on sale, and I didn't know what it was. I was like, I got a weird pasta. It's Durham wheat pasta,
hmm.
and it does not raise my blood. I mean, I ate a big bowl of pasta with, sauce and meat, and I checked my blood sugar, and it was like nothing. And I was like, how did that happen? Like, I'm
Yeah.
finding these foods that actually work with my body. And I think that's so cool because everybody says, don't eat pasta. Blood sugar? No, don't eat pasta. But I can in moderation. And I love the fact that I can eat more because this doesn't affect me like that.
One of the ones that we've been trying out is a brand called Bonza,
Mm,
and they're garbanzo bean
mm,
pasta, so chickpea.
I love that.
And I mean, you have to cook it exactly the way that they say on the box.
Hmm.
Like it's like you cook it to 8 minutes, you pull it out. Otherwise, it takes a turn. But oh man,
Yeah.
it is actually really good. Like it's like I can't tell the difference between that and the normal pasta that I ate. And so
Right.
they've got their own mac and cheese now. They've got all these different, linguine, fettuccine, rotini, spaghetti,
Hmm.
bow tie, macaroni, like all of these different noodle types just made out of garbanzo beans. And we actually used to grow garbanzo beans on the farm. So to see some of this start to take a turn into that, it's like, okay, people
Yeah.
are people are branching out. For some people, they're moving towards these things because they're celiac and they want to be able
Hmm.
to have a bowl of pasta like you and I can,
Right.
and they just can't because of the gluten markers that are in those pastas.
Hmm.
But by swapping it out, there was another one that Debbie tried. It's called palmini, and it's essentially noodles made from palm hearts.
Mm,
Actually pretty good. Like
I like palm hearts.
if you're looking for more on the veggie side of things, that's pretty neat.
It is.
So, to me, like that's exciting because, I like the exploration of food, like all these things that are changing that, make food more delicious.
Yeah, me too. And what I think amazing is like,
Oh,
what's up?
oh, Debbie's telling me here, just so you know,
Hi, Devi.
uh, the Bonza pasta is low on the glycemic index.
Mm, that's
So,
awesome.
so some info for you. So that way you can get yourself some pasta.
I love it. And that's the thing is like, well, I was gonna say it's like I didn't like yogurt, and then I loved yogurt, and then I
Mhm.
hated yogurt. But then when I liked yogurt again, there was new brands of yogurt, and then I
Right.
didn't. I was tired of yogurt, and then I came back to yogurt, and there's this Greek yogurt, and I liked yogurt. But now I'm not so much into yogurt. But I mean, and we go in those spurts like that. Somebody will say, "I thought you didn't like yogurt," and I'm like, "Well, I
Mhm.
didn't. I didn't." And again, it depends on how it's prepared. I didn't like crab the first time I had it, but now crab is okay because I had it the way it was meant to be made. You know.
That for me, that is rhubarb. I had never had rhubarb. Like I loved the taste of rhubarb,
Okay.
but it was to me rhubarb was like eating celery that was flavored like rhubarb.
Oh, okay.
So it was just like, no, no, not a fan of that. But the first time Emily actually made rhubarb anything, and I was like, I'm not a fan of rhubarb, but hey, I'll try it, just
Mm-hmm.
because you never know. It's always like, hey, maybe this time I'll like it because it's been a while since I've had it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried it on and off several times, and it's been like, nope, 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 nope. Emily made like a strawberry rhubarb cake or something, and
Ooh, yeah.
and I took a bite and I was like, oh my god, yes, this is
Yeah.
what I've been looking for.
It's just in the right amount with the
Hmm.
other ingredient. You would never eat a salt cake, right? But you're gonna put
Right,
a little salt in your cake, but you don't want to make that the main ingredient. It doesn't taste right.
right. So I was really excited, the first time that I got to have rhubarb, and I liked it, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, wow. It's like because I always loved the flavor of it, but the texture I couldn't get past.
I
And for
understand
the
that.
first time, I had rhubarb that was cooked the right way for at least my taste, my texture palette. Yeah,
I love that. I have a farm question for you. I've been
let's do it.
thinking about it all week, and I didn't research it at all because I thought, why? I can turn this into a conversation with Jeffrey, or I
Ooh,
can look it up and find the answer. So
hmm
cows, right?
cows. Yep, used to raise
We're
cows.
okay. So like the cow, the female cow, we we
Hmm.
get we get milk from the cow because the cow produces milk, right? And the
Hmm.
cow produces milk, and we get the cow. And if we didn't get the milk from the cow would die, right? So
Some of them, yes.
so uh, we're how did those cows survive before people were milking them? Because I'm having this real hard time imagining the cow in the wild. Just I don't get it. I don't get it.
So, all right. So to understand this, you have to go back to discussions on selective breeding.
Mm, awesome.
So cows, so all cows produce milk after like after they've had their calf.
Okay.
Now, differences is you could go out and milk any cow, but their ability to produce milk is fundamentally different amongst the different breeds. So, for
Okay.
example, you you could go out and milk your Angus, but you're not going to get the volume of milk that you would from, say, a Jersey or a Holstein.
Gotcha.
The reason why is that Jerseys, Holsteins, there's a couple other breeds, um, have been selectively bred throughout a millennia essentially
Hmm.
to be the milk producers that they are, to be constantly producing milk versus producing milk after having calf. Like it's a selectively bred trait.
Okay. So initially it was the calf milking the mom.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
And depending on the species of cow, some of them will continuously produce milk as long as it's being extracted. but most cases they kind of dry up a little bit until it's calving season again, and then voila, they're back to milk. But Jerseys and Holsteins were bred for their milk production, their volume, and the consistency in which they produce milk.
Yay, science.
So that's like ancient archaic science. It's like, hey, I like this breed because it gave me a half a bucket more milk than this other breed did. I wonder if I can
Sure.
get some more of these guys. This was really it was more like trial and error than it really was like actual science.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it passed for science at the time. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
So I didn't raise dairy cows. I raised beef cattle.
Mm.
But with dairy cows, you run into a lot of issues. Because I mean, Jason, how would you feel if I was milking you every day?
Mm.
No, don't you smile at me like that, you son of a bitch.
Well, it depends. Are you
Devi's cackling over there.
are you gonna sit there and drink it in front of me?
Wait, why the hell do you have that milk mustache, Jeff?
Right?
None of your business.
I know what you mean. After the
But
first week, it might get a little old. I might need a break.
and so that's one of those things that currently they're looking into, because milking cattle is it's rough on the cow in a lot of ways, but not
Right.
milking them is equally as bad because that's what they've been bred to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this weird cross section of, we're continuing to do something but we're maybe not necessarily doing it the right way. Like, there's a lot of cleaning, a lot of sterilizing that you have to do. Otherwise, you'll end up with cows that get, they'll get sores on their udders. You'll end up
Right.
you'll end up having the milk get tainted because of different bacterias. So there's this massive intersect of, how do we keep the cattle healthy? How do we keep production up? A lot of questions going back and forth. So, and that's one of those things where you gotta let science do science to figure some of these things out, because you don't want to harm the animal when you're doing this. And I'm sure that there's a bunch of people that are probably, if they hear that, they're gonna scream and cry. And all I can tell you is that if you don't milk those cows, they will have a very, very, very painful life until they die, because that's
Right.
what happens to them. That's what they were bred for.
Exactly.
And so that in and of itself is, I would say, equally as disgusting.
I totally agree. And so, but if you take a cow who emits methane to produce the milk, or an almond tree which creates oxygen to produce that milk, you could see where you would slowly want to go to maybe an almond milk or an oat milk or a different variety of milk that isn't created from that.
Or you let science do science, and where they've started to see where, by using certain seaweeds and kelps like in their feed, they've been
Mm.
able to reduce methane production in cattle anywhere from 66 to 97%. It's kind of all over the board. They're still trying this out to figure out
Aw.
what this looks like. So, I mean, really, it's kind of one of those things, like, like, there's a bunch of people who are consistently screaming, follow the science.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let the science do the science. If there's a way that cattle can reduce their methane production, awesome.
Heck yeah.
Because, that is going to be better for our environment, number one. And usually when you've got high methane production in animals, it's usually because there's something they're eating that they're done agreeing with.
Right, because it's not healthy. I like
Right.
that.
So that, to me, that's awesome, and we need to let the science do the science.
And
Whether or not you think that it's a viable science isn't up to you, because ag science is very much a real science. And just like soil sciences, just like
mm-hmm.
crop sciences, just like livestock sciences, it's
Yeah.
really figuring out how do you do things the best way. It's not just about getting production, because the thing is that we can get production. That's not an issue.
Yeah,
The
we've
question
proven
is
that.
how do you do it in a way that is sustainable, viable, safe, and effective? It's, like, this
Yes.
rise in, like, the hormones issue has come to be a bit of a problem, because we're finding that, the hormones that have been given to cattle get passed on.
Mm.
But, like, for example, this big issue of, there's been a outcry of people being pissed off over cattle getting vaccinated, treated, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
That what?
Last I checked, you kind of don't want your cow dying of preventable diseases, kind of like you don't want your friends dying of preventable diseases.
Right.
It's like
So
I can understand like the not treating the meat with antibiotics thing. It's I'm on the fence about that one
well,
because
if you can have a sustainable farm, and everybody thinks that there's the producers who have the 80 cows, and then there's the smaller producer that has 4 or 5 cows, and they treat them in a humane way, and they monitor that stuff, and there's different ways to create the same thing.
well, and that's the thing. Like we ran 50 cows, and we had our summer pastures and our winter pasture. Our winter pasture was a lot smaller,
Mm-hmm.
and why was it smaller? Well, number one, it was by our house. Number two, when you get a lot of ground and snow cover, you don't exactly have, they're not exactly eating a whole lot off the ground. You're usually
Yeah.
feeding them hay and cake. Cake, not obviously not like you're going to the baker and getting a cake. It's a grain compound that has a bunch of nutrients packed into it. It's called cake.
Love
Um,
it.
and then you also have salt licks too to
Mm,
help them get the different another nutrient profile there.
mm.
So you combine all those things. It's like wintering pasture, yeah, a little bit smaller, but they're huddling for warmth because eastern Montana's cold as fuck,
Yeah.
and we're providing a bunch of straw, a bunch of windbreaks. We had infrared in our barns, so that way you could keep not infrared, heat lamps and
Mm-hmm.
infrareds to help keep calves, newborn calves warm.
I love that.
And so it's one of those things where during the summer they had a lot of acreage to roam around. During the
I
winter,
like
not as
that.
much, just because number one, you don't want to have a lot of acreage during calving season. You want to be able to know that you're in a very small area. You're going to be able to look very quickly to find your calves, especially when you're hitting temperatures 20, 30, 40 below zero at night.
Yeah. You don't want them
Like,
wandering a far distance away from the herd.
well, and the longer that you have a calf that's out in those temperatures, the more, especially newborn, or if anybody gets stuck,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to end up killing the cow and the calf, and that's just not good.
No, I like
So,
cows.
that's just, you know, there are some practical applications, but unfortunately, there are impractical applications. There's a lot of feedlots where they're elbow to asshole, and it's just a mess. It's disgusting, and
Right.
there's been I would say in some cases reasonable outcry on treatment. Some cases, not as many as people would want to say, but there's definitely some cases of unreasonable treatment of cattle out there, and that's one of those things, like trying to figure out how to treat your livestock humanely is in some ways it's a weird concept, because in the end, you're raising these animals to be cold for food.
Right.
But at the same time too, like, if you don't treat these animals well, what ends up happening is they end up dying because of diseases. They end up dying because of broken bones and all that other stuff. So,
Totally.
oh,
Okay.
looks like we got Emily up now.
Yay, that's awesome. I'm so glad they're doing better.
Oh yeah, they're definitely doing all right. I think Emily's up for her next shot like in a week or so.
That's awesome.
10 days.
So
So
the WHO put out their study on where the virus came from. Last week, I was like, China, huh? The lab, huh? And I figured out where I heard that from, and it was from the former head of the CDC, saying
mhm.
that it came from that. And I don't know why, because he had no proof to back up his theory, and now they're talking about. So we never actually addressed where they thought it was coming from, which was the wet markets. And
Mhm.
do you know what a wet market is?
Yep, I do.
Okay. It's where they trade live and dead animals that, from around the country. And
Mhm.
so the bats, when you store a bat that is prone to have COVID with livestock that is an intermediary between us and that, then
Hmm.
it can pool in these things. And actually that's where the SARS virus came from. So they
Hmm.
still think the first cluster came from a Wuhan wet market.
Hmm.
And so I guess I remember early on that they were saying that this lab was taking their infected animals to the wet market. And now this all makes sense. But people that worked in that lab and people that have worked with China for 15 years on policies actually sat down and talked to a lot of the people in the institute for infections in China, and they've worked with them, and they've pretty much cleared that. They said there's more digging to do, but the wet market thing.
So, like I think I've said on here, my favorite conspiracy theory in the origins of the coronavirus is that there was a lab accident at this lab.
Yeah,
We've had scientists there, we funded that lab. That there was a lab accident there, and that's how COVID got out.
right,
The reason I say it's my favorite conspiracy theory is because it's definitely based in a realm of plausible. Somebody screwed up, somebody got sick, somebody took it out with them.
right.
That said, somebody ate a fucking bat. And the reason I say that isn't just because, there's been the whole, oh, it's a bioweapon. No, it's not, because if it was a bioweapon, it did not have a fast enough body count for it to be a viable bioweapon.
Right, right, right.
So I'm going to clear the air on that one right now, because we know that there are weaponized plagues, weaponized pox out there that are far more effective than this. So that's not a thing.
Yeah,
That is not a thing.
it's easier to
It's
kill people with anthrax than COVID,
right.
honestly.
Right. So the idea that this is a weaponized virus is just stupid, and I would argue probably racist.
Yeah, probably.
So now let's dial it back. Why the lab accident makes more sense is because, well, I mean, in China they are notorious for, if you fuck up, you die. I mean, that's just the function of their government.
Right, right, right.
But the reality is that if it were a lab issue, you would have expected to see more people at that lab be sick,
Mm,
which is why I don't think it's a lab issue. Now, what makes sense from historical data standpoints is that somebody ate a fucking bat. And why I say that is because if you look at other diseases that have cropped up around the world, for example, Ebola is a very common one that we end up seeing on and off,
mm-hmm.
and comes from people in Africa eating bats.
Yeah,
And a lot of the times what you're looking at is there's been this question of whether or not it's an exotic food thing or a lack of food thing.
yeah.
And I tend to think that it's a lack of food thing, not necessarily an exotic food thing. So because if the origin really truly is this wet market, this isn't a place where you're picking up expensive exotic foods that your rich are typically going to take in. This is where your poor are buying whatever they can afford.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's why I say that, historically speaking, we have more data to support that people are eating things that are really not exactly food
Yeah.
grade.
Or they're
And
eating something that was sold adjacent to. That's what my thought.
mhm,
My thought is that the bats were being sold next to live chickens, and so it was just this
or
easy to
something
jump.
where they, yeah.
Right. And also, guano, bat poop, is actually a major industry in a lot of countries. And
Hmm.
so I can see that there's multifaceted ways of contracting this. Just a kid
Yep.
running around in the market where bats are pooping. You know what I mean? And yeah, I could
So
see
the
that.
reality of it is that most likely, it came from somebody eating a bat. And I've
Mhm.
said that from the beginning. And the reason is because we already have historical evidence in other areas where other diseases have come from people eating, bats and other things that are not food
Right.
and catching these illnesses. So
Yes.
so as much as I love the conspiracy theory avenues, the moment that you take any sort of second to think about it and go, okay, what historical evidence is there
Yeah.
around the world? I mean, hell, even in the United States, we still have cases of the bubonic plague because somebody goes out and handles fucking prairie dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
It's so it's not
That's
it's
why we
not
have
this
Lyme disease, right?
Right. It's not this, grand, oh my God, the Chinese have tried to kill us, and there's this weapons lab, and shut up. That's not
Honestly,
a thing. Like, if the Chinese really wanted to fuck us with a bioweapon, they've got plenty. COVID is not it, and it never was. Stop thinking that.
yeah, especially since you can't think that and then also think that it's something that isn't killing people. So you shouldn't wear a mask, right? Those two things
The
don't go
cognitive
together.
dissonance there. It's
Yeah.
a Chinese bioweapon, but I'm not going to wear a mask to keep from getting it. I'm sorry, what? What level of
Right.
moron are you on? Because I thought I understood where you were at.
So,
which is why I said that if the last guy had said that wearing a mask was a patriotic duty, you would have had half the population been like, "Sir, yes, sir, I'm going to wear a mask and wear like 6 of them.
oh,
And I'll
that's the
double up on condoms at the same time." Yeah, no, fucking idiots.
there's the cognitive dissonance of all politicians lie, but I'm gonna believe this one as if he's God. You know what I mean?
Right. And so, a lot of people have, said, "Oh, well, you only rail on the right." Okay, well, it's my turn to rail on the left. All of these people that are reopening all of these things right now are fucking idiots, because
Mm.
the right the last administration had been pushing for all of these things to be reopened and to be reopened safely. Well, it was bullshit. We knew it was bullshit then. So now that we got the new guy in charge, everybody's in a race to reopen everything, and I'm like,
Yeah.
really, you think this is suddenly all better because we got a new guy in charge? That's your line of thinking? This isn't all better yet. Not
No,
even close. In fact, cases and deaths are now starting to go up in this country again.
that was the point. That was the point, is that
So
it's just as bad. So Republicans can say it's just as bad under Biden as it was under Trump. See, it wasn't
mhm.
Trump's fault. I totally get that. I don't see Democrats saying open everything up like crazy. I see them saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" You know what I mean?
Right. And, so this has been really frustrating to watch because, now, they're opening up schools. They're like, we're going to have kids
Hmm.
here more. And I'm going, yeah, this is going to go down in flames. This is
Yeah.
not going to go the way that you want it to.
Because
And
long-term long haulers disease is a thing. Even in children, it can be a thing. It hasn't been
mhm.
studied. So children might not be dying, but they might be the people that get debilitated in the next 10 years from having it as a kid.
Right. So that's where this is just absolutely insane to me. Like,
Yeah.
there literally, like, 3 months left in the
Yeah.
school year, and they're rushing to get these kids
Yeah.
back into classrooms. And I think that what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a COVID outbreak. Kids are going to get sent home again, and you're just re-traumatizing them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you would have left them at home for the rest of the year, said, hey, you know the vaccine is on the rise, and pretty soon everybody's going to be able to get it, and we'll
Right.
see you in the fall. But until then, we're going to hunker down, and we're just going to keep everybody safe until then.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for listening to Public Access America. We're going to continue on the live feed, and that's good. Have a great day. Hey, we moved. We're on Red Circle now. We're not on SoundCloud, but we are on Amazon Music and Audible. So that's fascinating to me.
Ooh, fun.
I know. That's so cool. What the heck?
Ooh, what do you got?
Let's see. We got wow, I love Chick Pass. What's that? Oh, chickpeas. I love chickpeas. We have
Chickpeas.
people. Thank you, Shy. Shy from Inspirations Beyond Disabilities was
Hey,
hanging around in the chat, and I didn't even realize it.
howdy, Shy. No, I think chickpeas are fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Especially like from a crop standpoint, like as a legume, they're great because they're a nitrogen fixer. So
Mm,
they do help prepare soil. Like, especially like when you've had stuff that's been overcropped for a long time, by planting something like chickpeas or different beans and peas, you actually end up with some good nitrogen fixers that help repair the soil. So,
mm.
it's part of that understanding crop science that allows you to grow better crops more regularly.
Right. But are they high in protein?
Are they high in protein? Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. I mean, if you've ever eaten hummus, you know that that is awesome.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So no, chickpeas, garbanzo beans are great. And as people start to figure out more and more what they can do with them,
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for that.
Yes, I am
Like I
too.
like the pasta. I actually really like the chickpea pasta. I think it's fantastic.
I'm all in favor of a bean diet. I try and have beans actually twice a week as well. I'm trying to do this with my body to where I'm looking for foods that I like. Right now I am trying to find a cereal. Like, I'll be honest with you, I ate mini wheats and grape nuts, and I would check my blood sugar and it would be up at like 350, which is
Hmm.
unacceptable, right? And
Right.
then, but then, so I switched to a different milk and I got it down. And then I don't know what I did. I got my portion control in line and it was good. And I was like, good. But then I was at the store and I was like, fuck you, Captain Crunch. And I got Captain Crunch with crunch berries. And I was like, if I'm going to be at 356, I might as well enjoy it.
Right. Oh man. Oh, well, it could be worse. You could have been the guy that ended up with shrimp tails in his cinnamon toast crunch.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy gross.
Cinnamon toast crustaceans. Wait.
That's so
Crustacean toast
gross.
crunch.
And
Whatever it is.
they're finding metal in Gerber baby food. But anyway,
Right. And that stuff's just funny to me
I
because,
really feel like getting you in trouble. Are both girls in the room right now?
Devi is Emily has gone outside.
I have one topic that I want to discuss that I'm just starting to notice that would probably get you in trouble being on one end of it.
Oh no.
And
Well,
then,
let's hear the topic, and then I'll see if Devi cocks their head sideways at me and see if this will get me in trouble.
so, okay, so feminism,
Devi's already smirking.
she might want to jump on. So feminism was this thing that empowered women, right?
Hmm.
And you can be anything and you can do anything and you can look any way you want and a man's opinion shouldn't matter. But
Hmm.
I'm noticing that women are starting to fight back against that because there's no good men out there anymore because feminism has said they can do everything and they don't need a man for anything. So now there's like one attractive man that every woman is going for, and all the good men have been like, yeah, okay, we're gonna stop looking. And I think women are like, whoa, wait a minute. So it's this interesting, I call it the pendulum effect, where people go hog wild for something, but then it goes the other way a little less and then a little less, and we end up 100 years from now with equality. You know what I mean?
Right. I don't really know that there's much of a discussion here, to be honest.
Okay.
Um, you know, th- I think simply put, when it comes down to it, equal rights are equal rights. Just because someone gains more rights, that doesn't mean that you suddenly have less.
Right.
So we'll start there. And number two, the idea that that women, people in general are, becoming more and more self-sufficient and they don't quote unquote need a man.
No, they don't. They find
However, that doesn't, I grew up with a single parent,
Mhm.
you know, and my mom proved time and again that, she could handle it on her own.
Oh, totally. That's not, I don't
Maybe
think,
not, maybe not as well as she would have liked to, or as well as I would have liked it, but that's irrelevant. You do the best you can with what you got.
yeah, we're all going to find a way to accomplish the goal. It doesn't matter race, creed,
Hmm.
gender, religion, you're going to find a way to accomplish your goal. It's not about that. I think it's more about the dating sort of aspect
Oh,
of this
well,
of
so that whole nice guy TM thing that they got
Mhm.
going on there, yeah, that's cringe material right there. Well,
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah, yeah.
nice guy. Why don't you want to date me? How about you go fuck yourself because you're being a quote unquote nice guy because you think you're owed sex or something.
That's
No,
right. Being a nice
no,
guy because you have an agenda that fits your own is not being a nice guy. It's being a
exactly.
creep.
Well, Devi's smiling over there, so I think I said something right.
That's good.
Because
Yay.
or Devi's putting together the PowerPoint of all the ways that I fucked up, and I'm about to learn something here.
No, I think you're doing okay. I think you're doing okay.
Now it's yeah, you said it right. When you're being a nice guy because you have an agenda, you're not exactly being a nice guy.
Right.
Did you hear that?
Not a bit of it.
Okay, so basically, you know what? I'm just gonna give Devi the headset and let Devi say it
I love it.
because I'm gonna screw this up and then I'm gonna get the PowerPoint.
I love it. Devi.
Hello.
Happy Easter, Devi.
Happy Easter.
I actually thought of you when I thought of this topic, and
Oh.
this was a tricky way of getting you in.
Just rope me in with hot topics that I can't put down.
I'm seeing videos and social media where women are starting to feel guilty for their feminism. And I was telling Jeffrey that the pendulum swings,
Yeah.
and until 100 years from now we have equality. But right now, I'm kind of worried. Yay! I'm kind of worried that this is happening, that women are going to start falling into this phase of I need to please a man again because there's not enough good men out there. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the issue is that we're not teaching our men, right, how to be good
Mhm.
men. We're
Right.
teaching our women how to avoid bad men. And that's problematic. And that's been a constant, thing in education, like, oh well, don't make sure you have your keys in your fingers at night, like,
Right.
or we could just teach men, don't do that to women because it's fucking gross. um
Yeah, we focus on
but
rape. We focus on the amount of rapes, but not the amount of rapists. You know what I mean?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, what I was saying to Jeff was like, you basically have guys who do that, but I'm a nice guy thing, and they do the nice
Mhm.
guy thing in order to like fulfill their personal agenda. They want to be able to like have sex with you or date you or whatever. But as soon
Right.
as that person that generally like it, in let's say this is a heteronormative situation, so the
Sure, sure.
woman says, I don't want to date you for any number of reasons, even if he's being nice,
Right.
which a lot of times comes off as pushy with these people. So it's an immediate like red flag, like, but I'm being nice,
Right.
Um, and as soon as that happens and the rejection happens, then all of a sudden he's like, well, fuck you, you stupid cunt, or whatever. He'll say whatever he
Right.
wants. He'll say, like, oh, well, you're a bitch anyway, or you're ugly. And it's like,
Right.
well, you just proved the whole point that you're not actually a nice guy and you're just playing a nice guy to get laid. And
That's right.
that's where the problem is. It's well, I don't understand, nice guys always finish last, I'm such a nice guy. I'm like, well, when you have to say that, you're probably not. And maybe you should work on yourself.
I totally agree with that. I had a friend that taught me that lesson. If you're doing something for yourself, then you don't deserve a thank you from me. And I was like, oh, damn.
Well, right, absolutely. And that's generally how people like approach relationships is,
Mhm.
and that's why I think a lot of relationships fail, is because people go into it with this idea that they have to prove something, or they have to show the side that they think that other person wants, and they
Yeah,
actually end up sabotaging their own relationships because they're not authentic.
that's
And
right.
that authenticity is really what makes people like you. And so if you go into a relationship not giving a shit whether somebody likes this aspect of you because that's just who you are, like, as long as you're not
Yes.
being a dick, then you're going to end up in a successful relationship. And I think that's where all my other all personally my other relationships had failed before I started dating Jeffrey again, is that I was like, well, yeah, I'll play that board game. I
Mhm.
love that board game or
That's
whatever. And
who
I
this is
hate
who I
playing
am
games.
now.
Yeah,
Right.
you take on the personality traits of the person that you're trying to date in order to impress them, when really
Yeah.
what's going to actually impress somebody who you want to be with is to be yourself.
I agree. And I think we teach men that they are entitled to something. And the goal
Right.
is when they see a woman to find out what it is that they're entitled to from her. When the answer
Right.
is nothing, but
Yes.
the man assumes, well, a friendly hello, I deserve that, right? And they're
Right.
constantly searching for what they need. And then at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, we taught women you can be a bitch like Roseanne and you still deserve to be treated like a queen, even though you're not treating
Absolutely.
people like a king or a person or human. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Well, and you always deserve to be treated well.
Yes,
Until my policy is like I will treat everybody well until they do something that makes them deserve not to be treated well.
exactly.
And that can be anything to anybody, and you don't owe anybody happiness or love
No,
or whatever. Like that's the thing. It's like your autonomy allows you to not have to give that to anybody if you don't
that's
want
right.
to.
Even if
And
somebody has given you something, you are not entitled to
right.
give in and of yourself anything.
Right. Well, that's I think what I find interesting is like the phrase, but after all that I've done for you. No,
Right.
after all that you've done for yourself to impress me. Like that it
Yeah.
that I didn't ever ask you for that. Unless I ask you to do something, I don't owe you anything.
I think men need to get that through their head.
They absolutely do. And that's the problem is that they've been taught if they just keep pursuing, if they just keep trying, if they
Mm-hmm.
just keep going, if they keep doing that nice thing, then that girl will eventually fall in love with them or whatever. And that's just not
Right.
true. That's just not true. And you should always put your intentions out there. Say, "Hey, I think you're attractive and I would like to try to date you.
Yes.
Would that be amenable?" And if they say no, then you can be like, okay, no, I become your friend,
Yeah.
you
Put
know?
put the transaction up front instead of behind.
Exactly. Like don't do all this stuff with the expectation that somebody can read your mind because they can't.
Right. I'll
So
get
the
you
best
flowers if you go on a date with me. Not I'll go on a date with you and then give you
right,
flowers if you do it. But,
right, exactly. Well,
you
and
know,
and also like, hey, I would like to buy you flowers. Is that acceptable?
that's right.
You asking for consent is sexy.
It
Asking
is,
for
right?
consent is sexy. And you don't have to do it in a not sexy way, right? Like
Right.
be like, "Hey, is it okay if I hold your hand?"
That's
Like
right.
that's sweet and that's kind, and I would rather have somebody do that than just try to grab my hand when I'm not expecting it, especially as an autistic person. I'm like,
Right.
"Ah, why are you trying to touch me?" Like, "Ew."
Right.
You
That
know?
makes that
So
makes total sense. What's fine to somebody isn't fine to everybody.
absolutely. So it's always the best policy is to just ask. Ask what you want. And if you
Yeah.
don't get it, then you can move on to another thing that you're going to want because I think the biggest problem with men is that they think that sex and relationships are a scarcity.
Mm,
And the reality is they are absolutely not. There's millions of people in the world. It is like you're creating this idea of false scarcity because of your own deficiencies. So,
wow, I like that. I can't get a woman because there's not any good woman out there is different
mhm,
than I can't get a good woman because I'm not a good man.
exactly.
I like that.
Absolutely.
Change who you are. I told my friend that you need to step away from relationships until you have to live life on your own and fight challenges on your own so you don't turn to somebody for that stuff and you know who you are
Yeah.
so you can find somebody that fits you and not the life you need, you know?
Absolutely.
Aw,
Like you don't want to force somebody to be somebody else just because
right.
it makes you feel good and you're attracted to their body.
That's right.
Like,
If they're settling for you, you don't need to force them into degradation to do it.
yeah, absolutely. And like you
Aw.
shouldn't have to settle. That's
You shouldn't, but people feel that they can't survive on their own and they need
ah,
somebody because,
and
well,
that's an
I
issue of mental health.
you have to come back and talk to us for a full hour one day because this could just go on and on and on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love you, Devi. Happy
I
Easter.
love you too. Happy Easter. I'm going to give you back to Jeff.
Okay,
All
thanks.
right. Yep. Bye.
I love having Devi as a resource, by the way, just so you know.
And that is why better voices than mine should speak on the subject. Because you're actually going to get good information.
Yeah, that's what I love, and that's why I told her, I was like, I just brought this up so I could get her involved.
Well, it's that's kind of one of those things where lifting up the right voices is what we need to do in society.
Mhm.
Like we're going to be able
Totally.
to talk data all day long with me, but subjects like this, I'm not the best person to ask.
I
I'm not the best
totally
person to weigh in.
I totally understand that, and that's why we need more interactions with more people like Devi.
Exactly. And with what you do and where you try to get more diverse groups of people talking about, issues that are important in society today. It's, having those conversations out there in public is going to get people thinking, well, hey, how do I address this issue? Or
Yeah.
how do I know that? I've never seen that this is an issue before, and wow, I didn't know that.
And you can be a feminist simply by sticking up for yourself. You know what I mean? Just cherish yourself. And
Mm,
that's the difference. You don't have to be a dick. You don't have Nobody has to be a dick to anybody. You know what I mean? But you can stand up for yourself and still live your life,
mm,
to your morals, to your values. I hate compromising myself for a relationship. I just refuse to do it. You know what I
right.
mean?
And that's the thing about finding the right relationship is that, you know, you
Mm.
work together. You find
Yeah.
your right partner and all works well. So,
So you know what's
or
amazing?
partners.
Partners. You know what's amazing to me is George Floyd, right?
Hmm.
He's dead now because
Yep.
he tried passing a counterfeit $20 bill.
I'm going
And
to stop you right there and just interject. I don't think a fake 20 is a death sentence.
I don't think it is, but how would we know when they never checked the bill?
Mm,
I know it's not a death sentence.
well,
Did
I
they
said
never
I
check
said it
the
shouldn't. I can't even say that now. I say that it shouldn't be because the fact of the matter is that it already was once,
Yeah, oh, at least.
at least.
At least.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on an aside here real quick because there is something that's actually really interesting that I've managed to dig up.
Oh, good, because I didn't know how to bring up this case from a perspective that the media hasn't been beating on for
So,
weeks now.
so hot take, unfortunately, and this is going to get people a little bit riled up.
Uh-oh.
But 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 I think that it's there's a lot of facets here, and it's definitely not going to be favorable to the blue. So we'll just say that El Paso, Texas, 2016. Another man um, was kneeled on for about 9 minutes and died of asphyxiation. In his toxicology report, it showed that he was on drugs. So I can already hear one group of people going, "Oh well, then he died from a heart attack, or he died from." Look, kneel on anybody for 9 minutes, and I guarantee you that there's going to be some issues.
Of
Drugs or
course.
not. I mean, even if you look at the mixed martial arts world where you have people that are putting each other into submission holds and
Mm-hmm.
making it hard to breathe so that way people will tap out. The difference is that in those rings you have a referee, and when it's time to call it, it gets called. End of
Yeah.
story.
When somebody passes out, the fight is stopped.
And you've got medical personnel that are there that are going to take care of people. This is
Yeah.
not that case.
Right.
So to me as the data person, now that we know that there was another case like this where you have somebody who was had drugs in their system and was knelt on and died, what that says is that the way in which that they're approaching people that have drugs in their system
Mm-hmm.
is not consistent with protecting and serving human life, because this method is killing people,
Yeah.
and that method needs to go away. And what you're seeing in testimony right now is that you have veteran detectives that are coming out and saying that what happened was not only not policy but a complete abuse of force.
Yeah. It's like killing. It's like shooting a gun. That's what the head of the Minnesota Police Department said. It's in the same tier as shooting somebody. It's lethal force that shouldn't be used unless extremely necessary.
And that was just it. Like, it wasn't necessary in El Paso, and it wasn't necessary with George Floyd.
And right.
So and I mean, the 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 audio from the video itself.
Mhm.
So,
Oh, I agree. But
uh,
I mean, medically, from a layman, there's a vein that puts blood into your neck on one side and a vein that brings blood out of your brain on the other side.
your
And so
carotids.
if you press on those and a windpipe, you can't get blood to the brain and you can't get oxygen to the body to put it to the brain. And then when you have another officer kneeling on the chest, you can't get the oxygen from the windpipe, of course, to the lungs. So it's this thing. Of course it's going to kill
So
somebody,
yeah,
right?
they called it mechanical asphyxiation. So
Right.
basically, somebody restricted this guy's breathing to the point that he lost the oxygen to his brain necessary to sustain vital function.
Right. So I don't know if there's I mean, I I don't see conviction in Chauvin's future, but he definitely should be. He cost his city 27 million dollars? 23 million dollars?
27.
$27 million. I would be fired. Like the guy that blocked the Panama Canal for 7 days. Sorry, you should be fired. You know what I mean?
Well, and what needs to happen as well, as part of all of this is that
Hmm.
policy has to be rewritten on how people are treated. I
Yes.
mean, we've known that for a long time. But unfortunately, money is the only thing that talks to most of these people, and until they lose their ass,
Hmm.
they don't tend to change anything.
Yes.
That's where the frustration lies, is that, I've worked on the defense side, and money talks to most of these people, and until they lose their ass and have to settle for a bunch of money,
Yeah.
they don't tend to want to change anything.
And the more money they have, the less likely they're going to change. Such Chicago, Illinois.
So so the fact that this, number one, has already cost them a lot of money, and number two, it should have cost them some policy as well. it,
Right.
it should have there should have been a drastic change in use of force policies.
Mm.
And I would say that other police departments around the nation should take note, because especially if the Supreme Court ever does take up qualified immunity, like, this is going that would change, and they need to, because I every argument every argument would be made that what happened to George Floyd was not only, a scaled use of force that was entirely disproportionate,
Right.
and I shouldn't even have to mention that it was deadly. But the fact of the matter is that the punishment did not fit the crime. Period. End of story. And they don't even know that the guy actually did. They don't even know that George Floyd actually did pass off a fake 20.
That's the point. And even the clerk was like, I would have just taken it. Like I would have just taken it had I known, you know what I mean? Or I
You
would
know,
have just not taken it, but he called the police and he has his guilt now.
and that's the worst part, is that this dude, the store clerk that called the cops, for over a fake 20, he really has, like, that's a level of personal guilt that I don't know how you deal with
Yeah.
that outside of a lot of therapy.
But if he accepts it, he has to pay out of his check for it. And if he doesn't accept it, then he's breaking the law by allowing this 20 to go back on the street. So it's like he's in a tricky spot. I get why he did
Literally,
it.
like the dude is literally working for minimum wage and
Right.
has no choice in the matter. Like,
Right.
the dude who got this 20 was just like, look, my choices are, I accept something that's fake and I get fired, or I put it back into circulation, then I get in trouble with the cops. Like, I don't envy that dude's position. He has
Right.
no power, no authority whatsoever. But then to see that play out,
Right.
Like,
He did the right thing. He should not have expected those consequences,
nobody should have. Nobody should have
Nobody should have.
expected those consequences. There is nothing at all that says that, this person, should have been, number one, arrested in the way that they were, that they should have
Right.
had. The fact of the matter is that, he wasn't even like really, like, he wasn't resisting.
Nope.
He wasn't combative. He
Nope.
was having problems because, number one, well, turns out he had drugs in his system, but number two, he had also had COVID, so he
Yeah.
was legitimately having a hard time breathing.
And he was claustrophobic, which made putting him in the back of the car the way they did, it caused anxiety. You know what I mean?
So you have all of these things compound. There is no reason why any of this should have played out the way that it did.
Right. And
And especially from the use of force side of things.
for the record, you could test every American and you would find out at some point they have drugs in their system. You know what I mean? Like Nexium causes a false positive for marijuana. So you're going to find drugs in people's system regardless. That's just how it is. They're in everything. SSRIs can be in our water. I mean, because
Mm-hmm.
we flush this stuff. So I don't want people to get hung up on the drug thing. To me,
No.
drugs is a vacation for poor people because we can't afford to go to Bermuda. So we get high so that for an hour we don't have to think about the fucking crappy world we live in. And people need to get
Yep.
past that.
Well, and people need to fucking legalize marijuana at this point. Like,
Mhm.
for example, you've got a number of states that have already done it. You've got more states that are going to do it. The feds just need to say, you know what, fuck it, we're stepping out of this one. We're not, we'll let the states regulate it the way that they want to regulate it. We'll let states
Mhm.
decide what interstate traffic looks like for that. If Washington can sell to Montana or vice versa, or
Right.
whether or not anybody can, it's just that, the feds had their chance to legalize it and tax it. And at
Yep.
this point, the feds can now fuck off and let the states deal with it the way that they want to.
I think it's something the feds need to stay out of unless it becomes an overall agricultural thing they need to regulate. But they're talking about, the Fed is talking about legalizing but putting a cap on it, 10% for
Uh,
THC.
No, I think that the feds just need to fuck right off with themselves and
Yeah.
let the states are already putting in their own laws and regulations on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, they can deal with it as they see fit. Really, the only thing that the Fed needs to do is say, number one, it's legal. Number two, banks can now work with these growers.
Right. Yep.
Because the reality is that you've got people who are growing it, you got people who are selling it, you got people who are paying taxes on it, you got people who are paying employment taxes on it,
Mm-hmm.
but they can't use a fucking bank
Right.
because it's a federally illegal drug. I'm sorry, but that's just fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Like if you want to change a power dynamic between some of this, you just legalize it and let states figure it out. Some states are going to be like, nah, we're not going to do that right yet. Other
Yeah.
states have already been like, yeah, we're doing it. It's worked out great. It's not going to be the windfall now that states think it's going to be in terms of tax revenue,
Mm-mm.
because you've got a bunch of other states that have already made that a thing, and they've made their money off of it. And eventually, what's going to happen is that weed tourism that some of the early adopter states managed to have, that's going to fade out as other states legalize. And really, you got people that are spending money on this stuff anyways. The state can tax it and do like what Washington and Colorado did. Whatever taxes you pay on it, they go towards healthcare, they go towards education, they go towards any number of programs that help people affected by others. And on top of that, one of the other things that has come out in these studies is that states that have had legalized marijuana have seen their opioid deaths and usage rates drop dramatically. I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, and especially, with the other confounding factor in that you have to take into account is that you've also had all of these opioid suits play out. So doctors aren't prescribing opioids all willy-nilly anymore.
Right. Thank God.
But having the access to marijuana has kept people from using other opioids. So,
Mm-hmm.
and especially now where you have fentanyl, out being shipped out across the country, There's already been some cases come up where things are being laced with fentanyl, and that's dangerous in and of itself. I mean, that stuff is hard to control in a hospital setting. And when I was working for the hospital setting, they even voiced their concerns. A lot of them wouldn't use fentanyl because of the very reason that it was hard for them to control, and then the addiction issues that came along with it. Like, they weren't willing to risk their insurance claims on using fentanyl. It just was not a thing for them.
Right. When a doctor prescribes a medication to somebody, it's risk reward. It's what reward will somebody get from the risk, but there's always a risk, you know?
Absolutely. So
And
the idea that the idea at this point that, marijuana needs to continue to be illegal is just absolutely asinine.
Of course it is. We should be moved past that, because if we had legalized it 100 years ago, the benefits that we could have studied and figured out and made precise could be amazing, but we're just starting that process now. But marijuana has a lot of things in it, it comes from nature, and it will, I don't know, I just hope they don't overuse it. I hope pharmaceuticals don't take it over.
Well, pharmaceuticals are already trying to use it.
Yeah,
there's a drug called Marinol that's a derivative of marijuana, but like a lot of things, you don't get overdoses on straight weed. Why? Because the chemicals that are in weed will naturally knock you out. Whereas, the same was with opioid. You didn't have people die from opioid or opium, I should say, because the chemicals that were within the opium plant poppies, there were other chemicals that would balance out and cause the body to shut down and go to sleep.
And you were taking it in a micro dose level, one after the other, until you passed out. It wasn't you're getting one super large dose that takes you beyond passing out.
Right. But with opioids, what they've done is they've refined those chemicals, and same with Marinol. They've refined it to the point where you get this super, super sharp benefit to it, but you don't have any of the limiting factors, and it'll become deadly. I guarantee it. I've had a number of people who were pro-marijuana, anti-marijuana, that for other severe injuries or other issues, they switched over to marijuana, and for the remainder of their treatment, and they were just like, this makes far more sense to do. I'm not a zombie that's on a bunch of pills.
But isn't that the problem? I mean, this is a bit of a conspiracy, but just from watching, the government likes us distracted or inebriated. You know what I mean? Because we're easier to control that way. More of what they want to do gets through that way.
Well, I mean, the government I have my own issues with the government. They're going to do what they're going to do regardless of whether you're distracted or inebriated. That's just the end of the story. And they're going to do what they're going to do because they have the power to do it, and fuck you in the process. That's really all there is to it. It's not that they wouldn't do it if we didn't know if they knew that we were paying attention. They do it out in the fucking open and don't give a shit. That's the reality of it.
Unless it's UFOs. Sorry.
Well, funny enough,
away from that subject because there is no proof.
I had a great quote from Stephen Hawking pop up like right before his death, and it was on my memories. Is that Stephen Hawking believed that we hadn't been visited, because if we had been and we had proof of it, like at Area 51, for example, that would mean that the last administration did a better job of keeping that secret than any other thing that they'd ever done.
That was my theory. Donald Trump didn't tell me, so that means that it doesn't exist, because he would have. I remember him being in so much trouble, and I would say he's gonna say aliens exist.
We've got so many UFOs. We've got only the best UFOs. Everybody else's UFOs are crap.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly how that would have went. And it's no. Like, do I think it's possible that we've been visited? Absolutely, I think it is possible. Do I think that we have anything saved up somewhere? No, I don't.
No?
I think that there's definitely there's a possibility. There's always a possibility, but I think it is infinitesimally small.
Okay.
So that's just my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that we're the only intelligent life form in all of the known universe is completely not the case. I mean, when you think about it, our own written history is only about 10,000 years old at best.
Yeah.
And when you think about just the number of civilizations that have come and gone during that time,
That's
is
right.
absolutely incredible. When you think about the fact that our own sun is 4.6 billion years old,
Mm.
you know, and you put that 10,000 years into 4.6 billion, there's a lot of potential civilizations that could have existed in this solar system alone. I don't think that there are any, but the idea that, even just within that time frame, now that's just within our solar system. That doesn't take into account our galaxy, which we have no idea how much
Right.
is out there that within our own galaxy. It's hard to say amongst the billions upon billions of stars in our galaxy whether or not there is an intelligent life form sitting in one of those solar systems out there. And
Right.
then put that amongst the billions upon billions of galaxies in the known observable universe. The idea that there hasn't been an intelligent species out there. Now, when I say intelligent, I don't necessarily mean advanced beyond us or at our
Right.
level. I mean just in any sort of ability to write and
Yeah.
communicate, just the way that we have. The idea that amongst all of those trillions upon trillions upon trillions of solar systems out there, that we are the only intelligent species out there is doubtable.
Okay.
And that, and if there is a species out there that possesses the ability to, not only just interstellar travel, but intergalaxy travel, would be
Right.
absolutely incredible.
It would be. But that's the fun part of thinking about it. I have so many theories on it because I love thinking about it. But let's see. Do you want to keep talking about aliens or do you want to talk about something real?
Let's. I mean, aliens are real. I got
Well,
probed by one once.
I believe that there's been some. What was he from Mexico?
No,
I-
unfortunately not.
Okay. So no illegal aliens are probing
No,
Jeffrey. Okay, you're safe.
no.
I believe we've had civilizations in the past that tried to do the same things we're doing, and that's populate other planets. And so I think the gray people are just our past that actually made it out into space before an ice age and then are coming back to be like, hey, how are you guys doing? You know what I mean?
Look
But
at him,
that's
be like,
my theory.
oof.
Right. You've been in space too long, bro. That's what I think. So cancel culture, huh? MLB, huh?
Oh yeah, cancel culture in the MLB.
Right?
Oh man, I've seen so much around this one. This one's just fun.
So the Republicans did something wrong. There was a reaction, and now they're complaining about the reaction.
hmm and that's and when you think about how many people of color play in the MLB,
Yeah, right.
I mean, from around the world, mind you. Honestly, once again, I'm going to go back to the MLB is a private business. They made a decision that
Mhm.
the values that Georgia is trying to go after do not hold up with the values of the organization, and they have every right to pull. I mean, you saw this with the NCAA tournament at the height
Yeah,
of the bathroom, the trans bans in bathrooms, and
right.
the NCAA pulled out of North Carolina, for a tournament.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, and so to me, it's like great. Making bad decisions costs you money. That's the way the real world works. You make a
Yes.
stupid decision, there are financial consequences to it. And it's so funny that what it comes down to is that when you make a decision, like if MLB had decided to leave the All-Star game
Mm-hmm.
in Georgia, what are they telling all of the people of color that would be participating in that all-star game in Georgia. That they don't think that it should be easy for people to vote. And
That's
I
right.
fundamentally disagree with that idea. I think there are plenty of people out there where I question their logic, but the problem is that it's not one party or the other. It's both of the main parties. People will simply vote for those parties based on this mindless idea that, well, it's at least not that party.
Yep.
And it's one of those things, like it's really frustrating to me.
It's going to the buffet and saying, well, I can have that piece of chicken or I can have that piece of lettuce. You know, it's like, I'm only going to eat lettuce or I'm only going to eat chicken at a buffet. There's way more options out there than you realize, I guess.
Yep. And the reality of these decisions is that when you tell people that you don't think it should be easy for them to vote, when you tell people that they shouldn't even be allowed water
Right.
while they're waiting in line to vote,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, what the fuck?
Yeah. What I'm having a problem with is the messaging on this. The messaging is this, and this is the mantra, and I think it's a pandering bullshit mantra, but this disproportionately affects Black and brown people. And first of all, when a white person hears that, the ones that I've met, they assume, okay, this doesn't affect me, right? But I think if you were to say, man, this affects you, you know, the Republican voter that works 9 to 5, you're not going to be able to get to the polling place to vote for your guy. And the Democrats, who you think are lazy and on welfare and don't work, are going to have all the time in the world to go, right? So you're not disproportionately affecting Democrats, you're disproportionately affecting Black, brown, disabled frontline workers that
Right.
could be Democrat or Republican.
Right. And really what it boils down to is that all of these reasons that people are trying to restrict voting access, like, let's think about it for a second. You know, if you're trying to restrict voting access, what you're telling people is that your vote is too powerful for them.
Yes.
And fundamentally I have a problem with that. That's you know, when you have people that are eligible to vote, you need to make it as easy as possible for all eligible people to vote. Now,
Yes.
now the crazy part about all of this is that they are literally going out of their way to create all of these crazy laws, which, funny how the party that says that we don't need more laws because we've got good enough laws on the books and that laws are just a waste of government time and money are working to create a bunch of laws that they think are more effective than the ones on the books and are going to waste a bunch of government time and money.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. That the party that supposedly cares about being financially conservative doesn't actually they don't actually care about that anymore. They'll spend as much money as they want as long as they think it makes them look good. They don't give a shit.
But just that they think what looks good is opposing the other side, no matter what it is.
Exactly.
And that's my problem. You're not basing it on logic or benefits to their voters. They're doing it blindly against something.
And the reality is that, you know, we've got a couple of different ID systems out there. Really, what should happen is you should have polls open, you know, for 2 weeks in advance.
Yep.
Number one, you should send out ballots to everybody. Number two, and then number three, you show up to your polling place with your filled out ballot and your ID. They check your ID.
Awesome.
They check your ID. Make sure that, you know, it checks out against their database to, you know, show that you're able to vote.
Right.
We can go into the discussion of, you know, the number of people that are disproportionately affected by, you know, previous, you know, crimes that have made them unable to vote. But the
Right.
reality is that if you, like with my state ID, for example, it shows that I'm an American citizen as well. So I show up with one ID, it says, hey, here's my ID that says, yes, I'm an American citizen and I'm a citizen of the state of Washington. So I can vote in the federal elections. I can vote in the state elections. I've got
There
my
you go.
ballot filled out. I can get everything tabulated in and out at a time that works best for me.
That's how it should be.
And that's, you know, the idea that you have to put all of these crazy fucking restrictions on are simply just to keep people from voting. Period. End of story.
Of course, but what I think is if you're
You
gonna
have to have a physical address. Okay, great. So is the physical address the sidewalk out in front of the fucking store? Because you've got homeless people that don't have a physical address. Are you telling me that
right,
they shouldn't be allowed to vote?
they're the
Like,
ones that need to vote the most.
or the family that's fallen on hard times and they're crashing with a relative.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I'm a guy
like,
that.
or you can't have a mailbox. Great. So you got places in rural America where they don't actually get mail delivered out to their house. That's where I lived. I
Right.
only had a PO box. I had a physical address, but I only had a PO box. Mail didn't come out to my house. Only like UPS and FedEx came out to my house. And you can't send ballots by those.
Mm,
So if you can't send to a PO box, my white ass Republican family wouldn't have been allowed to vote.
right. Of course not. You're working your ass off 12 hours a day, and then the polls are closed when you have the time off.
Right. So the idea that you should have all of these burdens in place to vote is just to keep a certain segment of people from voting because they vote a
Mm,
specific way. That's
yeah,
all that it is. That's all that it is.
yeah.
The reality is that all you should have to do is show up with your ballot that you received in the mail that you filled out
Yep.
and your ID.
Something that says you're a resident.
Yeah,
Because there's
you know.
people that don't have IDs apparently in some of these states. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to require it, you need to provide it. You can't
Exactly.
you can't
Absolutely.
restrict people from. You can't say you can't get it, but you need it. That's not. Then you can't make a law that requires it if you're not going to allow people to get it.
Absolutely. And that is a huge problem
Hmm.
because how else are certain segments of the population supposed to be able to vote when
Right.
they literally have nowhere that they are allowed to be?
Right, and I'm not
We
talking about immigrants. I'm talking about the farm worker in Mississippi, the guy
Mhm,
that's just in rural with no broadband and no
mhm,
mail, the indigenous people on their land that don't have mailbox service
mhm,
like we do. These people, they need to vote, and the reason that there isn't more of these people in office is because they've been restricted from being
mhm.
able to vote in these ways.
Yep. So there you have it. And the people that are fond of voting restrictions,
Hmm.
funny enough, are the same people that think everybody should have a gun.
Yeah, right. I love
It's like, wow, it's like, what, you think that the ballot box is far deadlier than your firearm? I'm sorry. What?
I love the new saying is, "Oh, you're not going to wear a mask, huh? Because God will protect you. Then why do you need a gun, huh?" So,
My personal favorite was when someone tried to tell me, or somebody sent a video to me where this priest or pastor was talking about how wearing a mask is anti-religious because masks block prayers, and I'm like, so your all-powerful God is silenced by a 5-cent piece of cloth? Okay,
wow, that's all it took,
wow, that's not very powerful.
right? I mean, they just created a whole Bible to keep people in line, but you ruined it with a piece of cloth.
Damn, wonder what
Yeah.
else I can ruin with a piece of cloth.
You know, I've been hearing this. I'm not going to stay on this topic much. It's still a thought in my head, but I've been hearing a lot this God exists because you can't prove that he doesn't. But I'm on this tangent of God exists because I can prove it. And so this is where my thoughts are. And I think that if you define God as a living, breathing man with fingers and toes, he doesn't exist. But if you can rephrase that and think of God as more of laws of the universe, like
Mhm,
something in motion stays in motion type thing, then yeah, there might be a God in the details, but I don't think there's a physical presence. But you can pray that Mars isn't going to run into us. You know what I mean?
right,
Please.
right, right,
But
right.
I just think it's the natural laws of physics are more of the definition of God. You shouldn't say he has gray hair and a beard. You should say an object in motion stays in motion. You know what I mean?
Well, you think about some of these things. Like, for example, why is it that when people pray or when people wish, some of these things come true? The answer is because thoughts carry with them energy.
That's right.
It's the positive energy that you put out, to try and make change happen. Sometimes it's through simple actions, sometimes it's through words. The idea being that, when you put good things out, good things return. Yeah, there's always going to be the bad things that happen, but the reality is that, I mean, at least for me, I'm more of a fan of random mathematical chance than I am of, the explanation of, well, this good thing happened because of God and this bad thing happened because God is testing you or the devil or whatever. It's just not that, that just doesn't work for me. But what does work for me is that when I put positive things out and positive things return, it's because I'm doing positive things around me to try and get positive returns. And on the inverse, when I put negative things out, I shouldn't be surprised when negative things come back to me.
That's right. I thought to myself, if we were meant to live up to the standard of an actual man called Jesus, we'd fail every time because we can't turn water into wine. But I think using him as a metaphorical example of zero, where if you do more than what Jesus would do, then you're plus, and if you do less, then you're negative. Like a miracle doesn't have to be water to wine. Sometimes a miracle is just introducing two people that will forever know each other. And so it's definition.
Or helping someone who goes on to do great things that help all of humanity. I mean, the simple answer is that when you read the Bible, what you read are a lot of men's interpretations of what is Christian and what isn't Christian.
Right.
But when you read what the actual actions are across, the three main gospels that I grew up with in the Catholic Church, what you see are actions, and the actions were very simple. If you love everybody and you take care of everybody, that love comes back to you in ways that you can't possibly fathom.
That's right. And that's what it's about. It's not a literal interpretation saying I have to go slay a lion. It's saying, hey, if you come into this scenario, it's I don't know, it's an example of what to try for. It's not a baseline. You know what I mean? It's kind of it's inspirational. You should always be inspired to be as good as this guy that they said was good. And if you're less than that, you should start trying to readjust yourself,
It's simply why I try to love everybody as much as I can,
Everybody love everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Hey there, A-Dog. Everybody love everybody.
Or ignore them. That's what I say. If you can't stand somebody, ignore them.
There's no reason to put negative things out into the universe, and that's just the answer that exists. Is that when you put harmful things out into the universe, you shouldn't be surprised. That's like, the best way that I know how to describe it is if gardening. When you put a bunch of time, effort, and love into your gardening, you're not surprised when the products that come out of your garden are delicious.
Right.
No different than if I were to dump a bunch of poisons and toxins into my garden. Would not be one bit surprised that when I go to eat those foods out of my garden, they're toxic and deadly.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's just it. Is you can be toxic, and don't be surprised when those relationships either abandon you or are toxic right back. But when you put in the time and the effort and the love, that's what you get in return. It's quite simple.
What a great episode. I did not expect any of this stuff.
kind of a wild ride.
Yeah. All right. So you ready for this one?
Let's hear it.
Mobster movies.
Mobster movies.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, mobster movies. That's a great one. Road to Perdition. I love Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks.
I'll have to watch it. I just watched Goodfellas last night. That's why I asked. And it could be one of my favorite.
Goodfellas is a good one.
3/4 of it is my favorite mobster movie. The last 15 minutes or so, I'm not a big fan of, but
Well,
I,
that
I
happens.
see why it needed to go that way. It's just I don't like watching cocaine usage too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks is a really great movie. I really enjoyed that one.
Nice. That's perfect. That's all I
So
needed. That was
yeah,
easy. I love it.
easy. Easy.
Is there anything you want to sum up with before I go on to my promotional?
Trying to think if there's anything that we talked about that I wanted to cover that we didn't. I mean, I don't think so. You know?
Okay. Jesus poops Easter bunny eggs.
No. The Easter Bunny definitely. Well, rabbit fucked a chicken, and that's how we ended up with colorful eggs.
Mm-hmm. Well, a chocolate rabbit fucked.
Oh my god.
But a chocolate, yeah. I love it. I love Easter. I love Easter for kids. You know what I mean? I really
Oh
think
man.
it was always one of my favorite holidays because of the spring and the pastel colors and all of the candy and just that one day when my mom was nice to me. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of Easter egg hunts and family gatherings, and
Yeah,
I had a video of my niece that my sister sent me wandering around in their garden finding Easter eggs.
that's
You know,
awesome. You,
so
I heard something interesting about Easter that I can only say during Easter. They make Easter eggs that beep for the visually impaired.
oh, that's awesome.
That is freaking awesome. I didn't know that. I want to get
I
them
did
and just
not
put them
know
out
about that
there.
either.
And you were talking about, just to wrap that up, you were talking about texting. Texting
Mhm.
originated for the deaf,
Mm.
and I saw somebody was explaining accessibilities for the disabled that normal people use, and texting was one of those that I remember her talking about. I think that was
Yep.
awesome.
No, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. In that, especially because there are definitely ways in which we could totally make this happen in different ways. Like, for
Hmm.
example, there is probably no good reason why somebody with low vision, like, I'm used to getting caller ID.
Right.
We have a system of dots and dashes, the Morse code.
Yep.
There would To me, I see no reason why we couldn't have something like, when you get a phone call, it starts vibrating in Morse code. So,
Yeah.
like, for example, mom, whatever
Yeah.
you know and technology is going to be crazy. There are going to be things that they come up with. Crazy idea. This is going to be a fun one, but who knows? Reactive phone screens that raise to
Yep.
make braille.
Even if the back of the phone has the braille, so that you can, when you pick it up, you can rub your finger on it.
Well, just that'll be my sci-fi manifestation for that is that
Yes.
his smartphones with braille
And
that allow you to feel numbers, and when somebody's calling, have a reactive, so it's like, oh hey, my friend is calling. you know
right. I love
don't
that.
know don't know if that'll ever be a thing, but if we put it out into the universe.
And herbal essences, if you feel the back of their bottle, you can tell the difference because there's the bumps for conditioner and shampoo.
Interesting.
So I know it's just nobody in the world wants to use herbal essences, but I'm so happy for that. I'm so happy somebody thought of that, right? And somebody
Seriously.
shared that so that we would know. People just don't know this stuff, I think there's QR codes everywhere that can help visually impaired people to get the stuff they need onto the device they can read it on. So I can find a menu at Waffle House by putting it on my phone and zooming it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think that's just so cool. I can, on the back of the Quaker Oats box, I can just take a picture of the QR code and get the cooking directions. So I think the world is going in a great direction. We're not trying to cancel people.
Right.
We're not trying to cancel people. We're actually trying to create things that fit everybody.
Reasonable accommodation.
Yeah, so I just think that's so cool. I love you, Jeffrey. You gonna
Love you
go
too.
celebrate Easter with the kids?
Yeah, I think we're just gonna park our asses on the couch and chill out and just relax.
Best Easter ever. I'll see you
Right.
next week. And we need to get Devi on. Probably not next week because we have Dan coming in, I
Mm-hmm.
hope. I hope we get Dan coming in, and then but we need to get Devi. Maybe we'll have to do like a late night thing with Adam and Devi and you and me, and just do one of those things again.
Just have ourselves a little fun debate.
Yes, we're trying to start the unsigned countdown back up, which is just a music-based conversation, just like this, but all about music all the time. And Adam's on board, so we're just looking
Oh,
for people to
I would
join.
love to talk unsigned music and just listen to music and go for it.
All right, well, you got it then. We'll have to schedule a date for that.
Yeah.
Go have fun.
We'll catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Public Access America. You can find us on Red Circle. We're no longer on SoundCloud, but you can find us on Amazon Music, Audible, Spotify, Radio Public. You can find us here on YouTube, where you can catch our live streams 3 p.m. Eastern. No, I'm sorry. You can find us here on YouTube. Oh, wow. Spontaneous ad reads do not work. Always have something in front of you. You can find us on YouTube. Our Sunday AM live stream is noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Listen to Inspirations Beyond Disabilities. Our live stream is Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And really do me a favor and try to change the world for good. Stop putting that negative out. How about that? 1 week, we don't put any negative energy out there, right? And we see how life goes.